Hey, so today we're going to talk about intuitive eating. So I get tons of questions about tracking macros, intuitive eating, like you name it about nutrition, the questions are asked. So I feel like intuitive eating is something that's come and been super popular here lately. We see it on Instagram, but it's like, where do you start and how do you do it? So I kind of did some research. I put a question out there and I was like, yo, so what does intuitive eating mean to you? And a lot of people were like, eat when it's hungry, like you kind of name it. I got a bunch of different answers. So I was kind of thinking like, well, what does intuitive eating actually mean? And how do we actually get there to where we feel like we can fuel our body based on our goals? Whether our goals are weight loss, performance, you name it, we want to eat to fuel our body and we want to eat for the purpose that we're trying to achieve. Then I researched a little bit more like what is intuitive eating, and there's so many different things out there. And if you ask me, like, it's just simply eating. So how I like to start off with my nutrition clients is this. Okay, so if we've never tracked our macros, like it's really hard to jump into like eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. So many people have a relationship with food, whether it's like a positive relationship, a negative relationship. There is some sort of relationship that our society has placed around nutrition. And what I find a lot of times is people like don't know where to start. So what my kind of goal and what I tend to do with nutrition clients is like, okay, we've got to see where we're at. So let's learn macros. And like, let's start off with the tracking in order to lead to a point where we can eat when we're hungry, stop when we're full, but we have an idea and we have a framework around exactly like what a day should look like, exactly what a meal should look like, exactly how to fuel our body based on what we wanted to perform to do. So for example, an elite athlete is gonna eat very different than someone whose ultimate goal is weight loss. So if we don't have a framework of what we're even eating in a single day, it's really hard to build out what a day should look like. So first step that I do with everyone is like, okay, what does your day look like? And it becomes very noticeable that most people don't realize what they're putting in their body and when they're putting it in their body until they start actually the tracking process. Use myself as an example. So last week I was like, okay, I do this for a living. I should know what I'm eating, what I'm not eating, but I'm getting a kind of lackadaisical around it. But I have a specific goal that I'm trying to achieve. Okay, I want to get faster. I want to get stronger. And I'd like to lose a little bit of body fat based on the sport that I do play. So I went through and I tracked my food for about 3 days. And I was like, holy moly, I thought I was eating way more than I actually was. Aside from that, every so often I like binge eat gummy bears because I'm addicted to them late night. We're working on that. I'm human too. But what I realized is like, okay, I'm working out twice a day. Why am I eating 1,400 calories? So in my mind, based on the fact that I do eat fairly clean throughout the day, not very caloric dense food, I realized like, oh man, in order to perform better, in order to be able to get the workouts and optimize the workouts that I'm doing, I need to make sure that I'm eating more food. And what I tend to find with clients is they're either eating way under what they're doing, or it's like, yo, you're eating a little more than you thought you were. And it becomes very eye-opening for the individual when they start to realize what they don't actually know when it comes to food. And it kind of opens your eyes as like, okay, well, if I have a workout in the middle of the day, what does my day look like leading up to it? What does my day look like after that? What are my goals and how am I eating towards them? As intuitive eating like has become super popular, you'll see it all over Instagram, Facebook, yada, yada, yada. I wouldn't associate it necessarily like with a diet. When I think of diet, I think of something a little bit more restrictive, and most diets are restricting something. Let's be honest. If you're eating keto, you're restricting carbs. If you're eating Weight Watchers, you're counting points, so you're restricting other stuff. You can say that it's not restrictive, but it is. So ultimately, my goal with people is like, okay, let's focus on a few things. One, we want to get to the point where we can intuitively eat, but that's with the framework of having the knowledge of knowing what to eat and when to eat. But also two, the quality of ingredients of what we're eating. Absolutely, like an Oreo isn't going to be the healthiest options, but if we're completely restricting ourselves from eating some of those foods that we enjoy, chances are we're not going to be able to maintain any sort of nutritional program long term. So rather than saying, yo, no pizza ever again for the rest of my life because I associate pizza with negativity, it's like, okay, well, what are we choosing to eat when we eat that pizza? Are we having a high quality dough? Are we having high quality ingredients? Are we adding a salad to the side? Are we looking at our vegetables? Like where we can eat pizza more often. Because I don't know about you, I enjoy it and I don't want to never have it again. So that's where I kind of look at like, okay, our diet culture right now is the point where it's like, okay, this is the framework that we have to do. It's all or nothing sort of mentality. And that's what we have associated with our culture right now. So that intuitive eating aspect is kind of gearing a little bit away from that. But it's something that you have to work to get to in order to maintain it correctly. Intuitive eating, on the other hand, is something that's a great tool to get out of that diet mentality. It's a way that you don't have to track things. It's a way like you're not glued to MyFitnessPal or some sort of macro tracking device. You're not weighing your food. There's a little bit more flexibility in the framework of like how it's done versus like eat whatever you want and flexible dieting and that sort of sense. So that's kind of what I associate more intuitive eating with, is kind of getting away from that rigid framework of tracking, counting, all of that. So I truly think macros are a great tool to use initially in the fact that you're using it to gain a piece of knowledge. You're using it to have a better understanding of food. But long-term tracking macros, what it can lead to is like, okay, you're ignoring like normal hunger cues every single day. You're sometimes like, you know, I talk to clients and they're like, I had 300 calories left, so I ate this, rather than just not eating at all. Or that you're using it to like restrict food or add in more food. So the intuitive eating aspect of things kind of leads to get out of that. Because although tracking macros is super beneficial and I'm all for it for a certain amount of time to really gain that scientific baseline data and information, but you're using that information to create certain habits, but you're really using it to get knowledge. So that way that leads into more of that intuitive eating where you're not you're not ignoring those normal hunger cues, or you're not eating just because you have a certain number left throughout the day. Like, you're full, don't eat. So that's why I kind of think macros lead into the intuitive eating aspect of it. Anyone who knows me or has worked with me in the past when it comes to nutrition coaching understands that like the idea of tracking macros for a long period of time is not something that we necessarily, it's just not sustainable. Like any other sort of restrictive aspect of the diet culture. Reason being is, I know for myself, like every time I eat, I'm not gonna spend the time to do that. Every time I need to wanna put something in my mouth, I don't wanna be constricted to the aspect of the fact that I have to count the number of food that's going in me. That's not to say that I don't have a general understanding of what's going into my body within a certain framework, but it's like exhausting. It's not something that is sustainable, truly long term. Intuitive eating is truly a great way to repair someone's relationship with food in general. It's a great way to have a little bit of freedom based on quality of ingredients and what you're eating, but it gives you a little bit of sense of freedom, so you're not like stuck with a certain like number that you absolutely have to hit, and that's like all or nothing sort of mentality. Looking at intuitive eating, it's like it takes it a little bit of a step farther. It's like, okay, how is this food making you feeling? How's your body feel? Are you getting away from GI stress and discomfort? Are you feeling fueled for your workouts throughout the day? It's really becoming more in tune with your body and how the food's affecting your body too as well. Two takes it where it's like we're really looking at like the quality of ingredients. This is the biggest thing that I look at. And the biggest thing that I like to preach is like the quality of ingredients. Like for example, in the past, you know, I had that bodybuilder's diet. I ate 5 times a day. I ate chicken, rice, and tilapia, asparagus. I could literally never eat another piece of tilapia again. Thank goodness I'm plant-based, and chicken out of a plastic bag was disgusting. So I look at it like this, like although like I was physically looked like I was in one of the better shapes of my life as far as leanness. My relationship with food was completely toxic, but also too, the quality of ingredients that I was getting was also diminished too as well. Like I was missing out on certain foods, certain entire food groups, because I thought it was unhealthy. It had that like good or bad like label associated with it. So think about it like this. I would not eat an apple because I thought it had too much sugar in it, because it didn't fit the template of what my nutrition said. So getting away from the fact that like certain foods are like good or bad and really looking at the quality of ingredients. For example, now I get asked a lot of times like, okay, well, what about bread? Well, good news. I eat bread almost every single day. But I look at like the source of where I'm getting my bread from. Like it's not that prepackaged like gross stuff. I'm buying a quality fresh sourdough bread. Reason I pick the sourdough bread is because it's fermented. It's going to help with GI health. So a quality of ingredients is going to be a lot higher. Rather than your $1.99 chicken that is pumped full of hormones. So you have to look at it like good versus bad, quality of ingredients, and what exactly you're putting into your body and how it makes you feel. I think that's far more important in many cases than hitting a certain number. Then you have more flexibility around like trying different things, like enjoying different foods that still are within the scope of like being healthy foods. And then there's like not that like I need to restrict myself, so now I'm just gonna binge eat sort of things too. Like if I'm craving dark chocolate, yes, I just have a little bit. I don't have the entire thing, but you start to find that like you're giving that aspect to your brain that you don't feel like you have to eliminate stuff, so you're gonna get it again. Like one bad meal, and when I say bad, it's like we can still make something that like is what we deem unhealthy, a healthier version, but still enjoy it because we know we're gonna get it again. The goal with intuitive eating should be improving your relationship with food and what you're putting into your body. Biggest, like literally biggest question that I get is like, can you see progress with intuitive eating? So the answer is yes, you can. You can see progress. Thing is, the question is slightly tricky because it all depends on like where you're starting off and where your goals are. So like anything in the nutrition world, I can't be like, this is 100% true. This is 100% like, it's not black and white, but it's all in your approach and like your level of consistency with it too as well, and kind of like what your goal is and what your goal is to get out of the experience. Biggest recommendation in like starting intuitive eating and like kind of getting into a place where it does match what you're trying to achieve is one, yes, actually start tracking your macros. You're gonna have no idea where you are unless you have that baseline sort of data. And then you want to really try, when you are tracking your macros, to add in a little bit of variety too as well. So a lot of that comes down to one, quality of ingredients, but knowing like, okay, fruit's not bad, it is a little bit more carbs, adding in some fats like avocados, cooking with oil, things like that. So think about it on that spectrum. So one, tracking macros to get that baseline sort of information, but then you wanna work honestly on that relationship with food. Not labeling food as negative, positive, bad versus good. Yes, ice cream cake probably isn't the route you want to go if your goal is weight loss. Like, I mean, some of that is, you know, a little bit what we might consider a little bit common knowledge on that. But you also want to get to the point where it's like, okay, you know that there are certain foods that are fueling your body, but the biggest thing with intuitive eating is really truly building a healthier relationship with food and getting away from the idea that something's bad versus something's good. So that's kind of my trick on intuitive eating. You want to also really get to the point where you can kind of track those macros and you're removing that tracking, but you're still kind of keeping the system of like knowing, okay, for breakfast, I'm having this amount of carbs, this is what it looks like, but I don't have to track it anymore. I know what it looks like. I've done it before. I know how to make the changes of whether it's going to be a cup of oatmeal versus a cup of rice versus a cup of sweet potatoes, what all that looks like in the day, but then also to the timing around what your goals are. So for example, if your goal is performance, making sure that you are properly preparing yourself and fueling your body for that performance-based event or that performance-based gym session, whatever that may be. So that's where the intuitive eating really comes into play is 1, track your macros, find that baseline. 2, regain a healthy relationship with food. 3, it's quality of the ingredients. And then 4, it's removing the tracking aspect, but really listening to those hunger cues, but keeping everything that you learned in those initial 3 steps.